And please join me in welcoming the 57th governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Welcome, welcome. First, let me acknowledge the members of my extraordinary cabinet and senior team, Karen Keogh, the Secretary to the Governor, Catherine Garcia, our Director of State Operations, Stacy Lynch, the Chief of Staff, Blake Washington, our Budget Director, Brian Mahana, our Counsel, and Anthony Hogerby, our Communications Director. I want to applaud all of them for their incredible work. And my incredible Commissioner of DOT, Marie-Therese Dominguez, thank you for all you do for us. Jackie Bray, our Commissioner of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. And of course, I want to thank Jano Lieber for his leadership at the MTA at a time when it is direly needed. So thank you to Jano Lieber as well. A special thanks to my partner in state government partners, Majority Leader Andre Stewart Cousins and Speaker Kyle Hasty, and the members of the Senate and the Assembly. I'm grateful for all of them here today. And of course, representation from the City of New York, Mira Joshi. I want to thank our Deputy Mayor for joining us here today as well, and New York City Transportation Commissioner Idanis Rodriguez as well. So welcome to all of them. And to all of our staunch advocates, our partners on the ground who are supportive during this process. From day one, I have made affordability for New York families a top priority. I always have, and I always will, fight to put more money in the pockets of everyday New Yorkers. That's why back in June, I stood up on behalf of hardworking families and simply said no. No to a new $15 congestion toll that at that particular time was just too much. Too many people were worrying about high costs, groceries, rent, childcare. These are real challenges for our families. And launching a toll that high really would have hurt a working mom or working dad trying to make ends meet, especially someone driving in from a transportation desert or far from outside the center of the city. As governor, it is my job to make decisions that take into account the needs of all working New Yorkers. So I made the decision to put the congestion pricing program on pause while we devise a different path forward. State law requires that congestion pricing simultaneously raise money for the MTA and drive down traffic congestion. These are important priorities. But I believe that no New Yorker should have to pay a penny more than absolutely necessary to achieve these goals. And $15 was too much. And I'm proud to announce we have found a path to fund the MTA, reduce congestion, and keep millions of dollars in the pockets of our commuters. Under this plan, the MTA will implement a congestion pricing plan with a reduced daytime toll of $9 beginning in January. You heard that correctly. It was $15 before, and now it is $9. That is a 40% reduction. This lower toll will save daily commuters nearly $1,500 annually. And that kind of money makes a big difference for our families. And there'll be further discounts for low-income New Yorkers. Car owners who make less than $50,000 a year will get a 50% discount on every toll after their 10th toll on the month. In addition, after 9 p.m., the toll is discounted even further. This is to encourage nighttime deliveries in particular and help reduce congestion during the daytime hours. Here's the most critical part. This $9 daytime toll is enough to secure the $15 billion in MTA funding that congestion pricing was intended to support. We're still getting the $15 billion to fund the MTA, and drivers are paying $6 less. This lower toll will still allow us to accomplish all and I mean all, of the goals of congestion pricing. New modern signals, the long-awaited 2nd Avenue subway, new electric buses, elevators, and this will generate major investments for our suburban commuters as well, on top of the $800 million we've already invested to boost the LIRR service by 40%, and the work that Metro North is doing across Westchester, Dutchess, and Putnam counties. We'll also begin to drive down gridlock and the emissions as intended. And we'll deliver major environmental improvements for places like the Bronx, so that lower-income communities will not only benefit from improved public transit service, but also cleaner air. And today, I'm directing the MTA to make major service enhancements to at least 23 bus routes in the outer boroughs. This would mean running buses more frequently along those routes. Now, this is all an acknowledgement, as we know, that the MTA is absolutely vital for our region's economy. Without it, people can't get to work, children can't get to school, and our state would grind to a halt. Years and years of disinvestment and underinvestment in the MTA by previous administrations ends today. Yes, it's hard, but that's also today why I'm announcing my strong support for the MTA's 2025 to 2029 capital plan, to ignore the challenge of funding improvements to a 100-year-old aging infrastructure would be nothing but an abdication of my duties as governor, and I will not do that. The capital plan will help fund projects that I launched, such as the Interborough Express. This project alone will save commuters between Brooklyn and Queens at least 30 minutes each way. It's a perfect example of our vision to build a safe, reliable, high-performing transit system that New Yorkers deserve. MTA Chair and CEO Jana Lieber will discuss more of the particulars of the capital plan in a moment. And I'm directing the MTA also to improve efficiencies, drive significant cost savings to protect New York taxpayers. And we'll continue to work closely with our federal, state legislators, and our city partners to close any gaps in our budget negotiations later in the year, just as we did last year when I structured a funding plan to keep the MTA from going off the fiscal cliff. Yet another example of my strong commitment to public transit. And I'll continue insisting upon efficiencies and savings in the MTA in the years ahead. Let me close with this. Congestion pricing is fundamentally about meeting three critical objectives: ensuring our commuters can rely on safe subways and commuter trains now and into the future, ensuring we can decongest our clogged streets, improving the quality of life for residents, the safety of pedestrians, and access for emergency vehicles, and ensuring we reduce vehicle emissions to enhance our air quality. We know our downstate businesses and our economy depend on the MTA to transport more than 6 million commuters every single day. Safeguarding the long-term viability of our subway and commuter rails, the safety of our streets, the health of our environment, and the strength of our economy, these are all hard to do, but they're necessary. And as New York City enters into a realm where no other American city has gone before, recall that the journey was first proposed decades ago. And this has been the law of our state for the last 5 years. When I announced the pause, I spoke about working New Yorkers, hard-working New Yorkers. And I said I would fight to put as much money back in their pockets as I possibly could. Some skeptics predicted we'd never find a path that would lower tolls while still addressing congestion and the important funding of public transit that millions of New Yorkers rely on. But that's exactly what we did. It was a challenge. But as a result, New Yorkers will benefit from millions of dollars in reduced costs. That's my commitment to New Yorkers. And I might not always take the easy path, but I'll always take the right path for the people of this great state now and into the future. Thank you. Now let me turn it over to the MTA CEO and Chairman, Jana Lieber. Jana?
Governor Hochul, thank you for your work over the past few months to resolve the issue and your determination to reach a successful conclusion so that we can start dealing with the problem, which is epidemical, of the insane congestion that continues to clog Manhattan, and simultaneously to deal with the challenges of funding our beloved mass transit system. I know that the press is going to focus a lot on congestion pricing, but I want to start out by saying how important your endorsement of the MTA's 2025 to 29 capital program is. Because of the action you are taking, New Yorkers can count on new train cars, more service and more reliable service because of new signals, structures, elevated structures and tunnel structures that, God forbid, don't fall down, that we're investing in systems and turnstiles that will prevent fare evasion, and so much more. All of that is made possible by your endorsement of the MTA capital program, together with your partners in the legislature, who I know are committed to funding it. So I just want to start out by acknowledging that you stood up for transit in 2023 when you solved the fiscal crisis on the operating budget, and today we're here to celebrate that both with your action on congestion pricing and the MTA capital plan, you have stepped up for transit yet again. But to the topic of the day, listen, the negative effects of traffic can be seen everywhere, whether it's people stuck in gridlock, missing time with families, businesses, and many of the business leaders are here today because they support congestion pricing, businesses who are having huge extra costs because they have material deliveries, and tradesmen who are spending hours stuck in traffic. Buses that are slower than walking, or car crashes, God forbid, that kill and maim New Yorkers because there's so much congestion and road rage. That's not the New York that we all want to live in. New Yorkers want cleaner and air, safer streets, and a transit system that works for them. They want train stations that are accessible for everyone. And again, thank you, Governor, for your support of the capital plan. Thank you. And, you know, the basics of human existence are at stake here. Are we going to allow New York City people to get ambulances that can get to hospitals? That's what's at stake here. Cop cars can get to crimes in progress. The basics. That is what solving the congestion pricing issue means to New York. We want to make New York a better place to live. And we hear a lot from politicians about local control and quality of life. Those are the issues that have been at stake in this debate. Anywhere else in the state and in the region, if ambulances couldn't get to hospitals with people dying in the back, or if crimes were in progress and cop cars or fire vehicles couldn't get to fires, I guarantee you that those local officials would speak up for their communities and want the state to get involved. Why should New York be any different? Why shouldn't we be able to take action to protect our economy, our environment, our safety, and our quality of life? Now, from the minute the tolling system is turned on, we're going to be watching the conditions very closely to see if we can achieve the benefits of congestion pricing as we work our way, starting at the lower toll, but we want to see if we can achieve those benefits very quickly. And we also want to see the benefits, not just for the environment and congestion and air quality, but also for transit. The MTA is ready to do its part to use the money that we're going to receive from the capital program and congestion pricing efficiently to build out the improvements that this program will support. We have been delivering projects on time and on budget again and again and again. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The L train, Long Island Railroad's 10-mile-long third-track project, the Metro North Viaduct, the miraculous project that is rebuilding the Metro North Viaduct in East Harlem without stopping service. These projects are all being done hundreds of millions of dollars under budget and on time. That's the new MTA, the business-like MTA, and we all intend to keep delivering transformative projects under Governor Hochul's leadership for the 80% of New York commuters the 90%, what am I saying? The 90% of New York commuters who use transit instead of driving. It's 90% of New York commuters who come to the Central Business District on transit. A couple of those are walkers or cyclers, but they ain't drivers. So thank you again, Governor, and thanks also to Mayor Adams and Deputy Mayor Meera Joshi, who's also an MTA board member, wears many hats. To our partners at the State Department of Transportation, under Marie-Therese Dominguez, and especially to the partners at US DOT who have worked with us as we figured this out. These are people who care about the future, who love New York, and I also have to give a shout out to the advocates who have kept hope alive as this issue has been worked through. You are the reason that we all are so hopeful about our ability to improve life in New York, not just for transit riders, but for everybody, and we bless you. So thank you for that. I just want to finish by turning it over to my partner in every way, the Deputy Mayor of the City of New York, Meera Joshi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lieber. Like Midtown traffic, this effort has been stuck in gridlock for decades. And unsticking this jam hasn't always been easy, but few things truly worthwhile ever are. And today marks real progress forward. I want to extend my sincere thanks to the Governor, Kathy Hochul, for her tireless work on getting it right. To the FHWA, the MTA, TBTA, New York City DOT, New York State DOT, that's a lot of alphabet soup. So more importantly, to the thousands of civil servants who spent time, hours, painstaking analysis, slow and steady running of the ball that helped us arrive at this moment. We're stronger together. We arrive at the best outcomes when we're unified. We catch our blind spots, and we find new ways to solve tough, intractable problems. That's what's been done here today and over the past few months. This plan will do all things. It will reduce traffic in the Central Business District, which will have a real impact for our carbon emissions. It will provide long-term investment in the bedrock of our city's economy, our public transit, creating good green jobs. And it will give everyone time to get used to the new reality. Having a transition plan is fundamental to the success of any major change. New Yorkers will look back on this moment with pride, a moment where we chose to do hard things that make our city a better place, not just for us, but for our children and for our grandchildren. When we banned smoking in restaurants long ago, 20 years ago, and in bars, people certainly thought it was the end of New York City nightlife. Fast forward today, our restaurants are thriving, our air is cleaner, and we've saved tens of thousands of lives from lung cancer. More importantly, we created a healthier new normal for this generation. We once questioned this big culture change, and now we celebrate it. That's how this moment will be remembered too. And I also want to thank the governor. Before we get to the other things, in addition to congestion pricing, I think I want to also call out what is in this package for the funding of environmental justice movements in the borough of the Bronx. over $100 million will be spent funding reducing polluting trucks that travel our city streets, especially in the Bronx. And it also buys that borough additional green space and an asthma center. I want to thank the governor also, separate from congestion pricing, for including in the budget common sense measures that will keep traffic moving. Up until now, Midtown traffic has hurt all of us. It takes away minutes, it takes away hours, those hours add up to days and months, those days and months add up to real dollars that are not in our pockets. Today marks that turning point. So as Mayor Adams said yesterday, this is what leadership looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
That concludes our program. Thank you for joining us. We ask that our guests please make your way to the lobby and the media team to stay.
Thank you again for joining us, and I've assembled our state and perhaps our country's brightest minds when it comes to how we deal with our transit issues and congestion and how we're solving problems for everyday New Yorkers and reducing their costs. And so I thank everybody that I introduced earlier for joining us, and happy to have them participate in answering questions.
Why don't we start with Henry? We can make our way this way.
Hi, Governor. Right here, Henry with Beck's. Good to see you. Republicans in Congress and even some Democrats have essentially made two threats: that they will gum this up legally until President-elect Trump becomes president and he can kill it for good, and also that they're going to take money away from New York. So on that second piece in particular, are you worried if funds get pulled from New York, this is going to hurt New Yorkers more than it helps them?
I'm not sure why the Republican critics would want to take money away from New York. Is that what you're telling me? They're saying they're going to take, well, that's something they have to address themselves. I mean, if they're willing to hurt their own constituents in pursuit of some political opportunities here, that's very disturbing to hear. Am I confident there won't be lawsuits? No, I'm in the middle of 9 right now. We've been sued every day of the week, it seems. This whole issue has been a growth industry for lawyers. And I think if people had just, taken me at my word back in June when I said this is a pause and we'll get to a solution by the end of the year, we could have solved a lot of problems. So I'm not afraid of any threats of litigation ever, unless my counsel wants to tell me something I don't know.
No, that's
Okay.
correct, Governor.
We're not worried about it.
But the goal at this point is not even to win the lawsuit, it's to run out the clock. So are you worried about the lawsuits meeting those means to those ends? Because that timeline's very, very short.
Right.
Well, we are following the same approach. We will follow the same approach with respect to this new congestion pricing plan as we did with the prior one, which is to say congestion pricing relied on an environmental analysis that looked at a variety of different scenarios from $9 to $23, $9 being the lowest number. The project sponsors then submitted a reevaluation at $15, and we're going to follow the same exact process here, using the $9 as the basis, submit a reevaluation at $9, and we believe that, as was the case in the Southern District litigation, where the judge found that process was entirely appropriate, that other federal judges will find the same to the extent that there's litigation, but that's broad.
For Jano and the governor, is this enough money, or do you think that new taxes are on the horizon, especially when it comes to the next capital plan? And then also for the governor, you paused this just before a tough primary season for some Democrats. Now you're unpausing it. Are you worried that you're going to get criticized ahead of 2026 because some might argue that you're making it less affordable for New Yorkers?
The initial pause was related to the timing of when it was supposed to start, which was June. I had nothing to do with that schedule. That's what the MTA determined, that it would be June 30th to start. It would not have made sense for me to pause it after it started or before we learned about the price. So that was the window that was available. So it's hard to imagine even a political question around the timing of that.
You could have stopped it a lot earlier, though, a couple months prior, but you never voiced any opposition.
Well, as you know, in March, we're very preoccupied in working on our budget, and I had to find out how much money we were going to have available from our budget process, which went into overtime by an additional month, and that was not resolved until later in April. And I began the conversations with our leaders about making adjustments in May, and we announced it in early June.
What about new taxes?
There will be funding sources working out with the legislature. Again, this is about simply restoring the congestion pricing path, and we can have Catherine explain how that will work, and Blake explain how it works, but that is a separate issue. Today I'm just telegraphing my interest in supporting the capital plan. This is not announcing how that capital plan will be funded, because that is a joint effort during the budget process with our legislative leaders and indeed the Assembly and the Senate. So that is a process that's still unfolding before us, as would be the normal schedule. I just mentioned that today to let people know of my strong commitment for the plan, to make sure that we continue investing, and also to reaffirm that my commitment is affordability for New Yorkers, that we reduce this 40%, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to put more money back in the pockets of New Yorkers, and we achieved that by structuring this plan at this time.
Chris,
Yeah. Has the actual tolling agreement paper been signed? And if not, when? And how do you reduce tolls across the board by 40% and still raise the amount of money that the law requires you to raise?
It'll be signed after the MTA meets. There's a procedure that has to be followed, which is next week, so that's the next step. We've been working very closely with the federal government to get concurrence on all elements of this. This has been taking, a considerable amount of time, and we've just secured the tacit approvals. We have to get that in writing still probably next week. But in terms of the financing, who wants to answer that? Blake?
Sure. State law requires that the congestion pricing program generates sufficient revenues to support a $15 billion capital plan. What we're doing today is allowing for the capital plan for revenues to begin to support the capital plan, and that'll be a trajectory where over time we're going to review the results of congestion pricing. We're going to review the environmental goals, but most importantly, we're going to review the revenue. We're going to review the revenues that are coming in. We're going to try to assess exactly what they're driving and what the MTA itself can leverage off the existing revenue. And the governor's charged myself, she's charged the MTA to not increase those dollars unless we're satisfied that it's absolutely necessary. In other words, making sure that we're assessing the value of the receipts that are coming in the near term, and then revisiting it into the future based on the facts on the ground.
And just to answer that question, no, it does fully fund everything that was envisioned with the $15 dole. So there's nothing that's being cut.
Yes, Governor, I believe you said it starts in January. Just for clarity, do we have an exact revenue service date for congestion pricing?
The date it starts, we're looking at January 5th.
January 5th, if that holds, that's 15 days before President-elect Trump takes office. He has promised to basically cancel it his first week in office. If he makes good on that promise, this would be functional for about 16 days, raising the question, will it have been worth it?
I'm not driven by the calendar of when people are elected or not elected. I paused this weeks before it was supposed to go into effect. It was a temporary pause. I said I would talk about the plan to go forward before the legislature comes back. That's the point we're at now. We're going to have another 30 days of public review, which is required. So if you take the election out of it, this is a very normal sequence of events, the timing of everything that we're doing. So we will deal with whatever happens, but I will also say that what we have done here in the state of New York is reduced by 40% the cost that people would have been paying otherwise had I not stepped up to do this. And those who are not supportive of this, they can deal with their own constituents. All I know is that we are serving a very large population. Look at the maps on your seats that shows the high number of individuals who are taking public transit in, even from the further out counties and certainly the outer boroughs and Nassau County and Suffolk County in particular. So I encourage you to realize that what we're doing here is fully funding improved services to make sure that this does not fall into disrepair, to make up for decades of disinvestment when no one else had the courage to step forward and say, yes, we have to do this, because this is the lifeblood of our region, and it's economically essential that we have this lifeblood of New York City fully functioning, not just for the next couple years, but for decades to come. Those are the investments that I'm willing to make at this time to show my belief in this system and how I understand how essential this is to our region and the state.
Governor, may I just jump in? Andrew, a lot of things get said during campaigns. Donald Trump owns office buildings. 90% of the people who work in his office buildings come via transit. He's a New Yorker. I think that there's a real possibility if he takes a hard look at the issue, he will, as a New Yorker, he will understand that not only is it better because of our density, that's why the Real Estate Board of New York is here and supporting this, why it's good for our business community, and it's even better for drivers. If there is less congestion, people who have to drive for whatever reason or choose to drive for whatever reason will spend less time wasted in traffic. I think Donald Trump may understand those issues as a New Yorker.
Marcia?
I have two questions for you, Governor. The first one is this. Did you take into consideration Donald Trump's threat to kill this when you decided this? And what would you like to say directly to President Trump, President-elect Trump, about his threat to kill congestion pricing? My second question is this. The people who have opposed congestion pricing point to the fact that the MTA has a problem collecting fares from in terms of fare evasion, that it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And they say it's not fair to charge drivers when people are not paying their fair share to ride the subway. So is there also a plan to try to cut down on fare evasion so that you can collect more money at the fare box? Two questions.
The first part, am I taking these actions today because of Donald Trump's threat to? No, again, I'll walk everybody through the timing again. Of back in June, it was supposed to start, June 30th. We put it on pause. I said I'd have a plan by the end of this year. And at the time, I said $15 was just too high. I've spent an enormous amount of time and energy finding a path forward, working with the federal government and our leaders throughout the region to come up with a way to put more money back in the pockets of New Yorkers, knowing as I do. I'm out there speaking to people. Yes, I do go to diners, and I hear what people are saying. I am very in tune with this, and they want us to save money for them. That is why I worked really hard to make sure we cut it by 40%. It is the law of the state to do this. We have to come up with the revenues to fund a $15 billion capital plan, and we have worked really hard. I want to thank my whole team again for all the energy they put into finding a solution that put more money back in the pockets of New Yorkers. So the threat that came whenever it came, I wasn't paying attention, is unrelated to the path that I've been on since we first announced this. There's threats every day of the week. You know, I don't worry about anything. I really don't. I really don't.
And if I could just jump in here on fare evasion for a moment. You know, one of the things that this next capital plan will include is the gates to make it so that people are less able to evade the fare. And I know that the MTA has been very focused on this, not only on the subway, but also on the buses, because no one thinks that you should get up and not pay your portion of the check.
Janet, do you want to talk about fare evasion?
Yeah, I endorse what the governor and Catherine Garcia said, which is there's $1 billion in the capital program for new turnstiles. The ones we have are just way too porous, and that's why, among other reasons, why the governor's commitment is so important. And we are moving. We've moved strongly on the enforcement actions on subway fare evasion are up by, I think, 150%, up 150%. And on the buses, we've actually made some progress. In the last quarter, we've actually seen a 5% reduction in bus fare evasion. So we're pushing back, mostly with the help of the NYPD and with the governor's support for new turnstiles.
Rebecca?
Governor, you'd said that you were busy focused on the budget at around the time that the MTA, approved the $15 congestion pricing toll. Are you suggesting that you were unable to multitask to weigh in when the MTA approved this toll? Because otherwise, you know, why didn't you express your concerns before they approved the $15 toll?
I think you misunderstood my answer when I said I had to conclude the budget process so I would know exactly where we stood financially as I looked to tackle the next challenge. That's what we had to finish the budget to know what our revenue. We are still negotiating with the legislature. Still not certain of what our expenditures are going to be and whether or not to be any money needed to help offset or have costs eliminated from this if we're going to make a change here. So it all made sense to say, let's finish this process first, get to that, see how much money we're spending this year in our budget, and then have time meet with the leaders, which I did for a number of weeks, leading up to the decision on June 5th.
How does that relate, though, to the cost of living? Because you said that $15 is too expensive for average New Yorkers.
We needed to determine.
Too expensive regardless of how
Right.
much the state is spending.
It's too right, but other opportunities for state offsets.
Okay, let's start over here with Sam.
You said that you were going to review the revenues, but can you immediately start bonding that $15 billion? Or is it that you're going to watch and then see if you can bond the $15 billion? And my second question is, you're sending this new plan for a reevaluation. 2 of the lawsuits have been amended to specifically go after the reevaluation. So are you concerned there about those lawsuits possibly having new legs with that? Because that has not been ruled on. And also the New Jersey lawsuit has not been ruled on yet. And that judge could go either way in terms of both the EA and a reevaluation.
As you're very successfully pointing out, this is very clouded in litigation. But that does not mean we do not have the courage to go forward and stand up for everyday New Yorkers, our commuters, and try to put more money back in their pockets and reduce this toll by 40%. That is the North Star of what we're doing here today. Every other actor will do what they choose to do and try and thwart the efforts to invest in essential dollars in our MTA, try to reduce congestion, improve air quality. Those are all laudable goals, and we anticipate litigation. We're still in litigation, but on the financial side, Blake, why don't you take that, and Brian, why don't you take the legal question?
Sure. We have a wonderful opportunity to work with the MTA's finance staff pretty hand in glove. And they're wizards at what they do, but there's no instance where they'll be able to do $15 billion in bonds tomorrow, right? This is something where it takes a trajectory. They have to obligate projects, they have to undertake projects, and then they ask folks to invest accordingly. So under any bonding scheme, it's a multi-year proposal, and the approach that we have today fully funds the capital plan over several years.
So will you be able to start the work, though?
Yeah, I mean, here's the difference, Sam, and you've followed us all the way through, is now we know we have a source. So we can actually start to move projects forward because as the budget director just stated, we know we have a source. It may take a little bit longer to establish the revenue history with the rating agencies and so on, and that's what Blake was referring to, the process. But we know we have a source, and that enables projects to move forward. And most important, things that everybody's passionate about, which were impacted, like the accessibility program and the Second Avenue subway. The governor's action allows us to, I just want to underscore it, we will be putting out the RFP for the tunnel boring on the Second Avenue subway promptly as a result of the actions taken by the governor today.
Nolan? Hi. Could someone sort of walk me through how you still get to $15 billion even though the toll is going to be 40% less? I'm confused. And can you apply that financial stuff to like magic to my rent?
Can I actually try as the non-budget person? We're required to give the MTA basically a $15 billion credit card. They need $15 billion in credit. And so if it takes us over a longer period of time to have the revenue, to have the income to support that, we've given them the $15 billion credit card and figuring out the back end on paying off your debt. They haven't spent any of their $15 billion yet. They're going to almost immediately. And then they'll start paying that off, and they will have the cash flow as we move forward to do that. It just may mean that it takes longer to pay it all back.
So I guess sort of my second question is, there was the TMRB vote many months before this. There was the MTA board vote many months before this. You control the MTA. You obviously had issues with the $15 toll. Why didn't you tell the TMRB, to whom you appointed the bulk of the members, or the MTA board, to where you appoint the bulk of the members, 15 is not going to work, lower it to 9? Why do this whole rigmarole?
The objective was to get it where I needed to get before it went into place, right? And that's why we paused it June 5th, weeks before it was supposed to go into effect. When you listen to New Yorkers who are struggling, as I do, and inflation was going up and a lot of other factors were kicking in, it's like I realized we cannot be tone deaf to our constituents and the people who live in this great state. And the realization hit hard when I hear from people that are struggling that we have to do something about that. So I'll take any criticism any day of the week for standing up for everyday New Yorkers and reducing their costs, because that's exactly what we did. We reduced their costs of what they would have otherwise had to pay by 40%. We got the result we were looking for. It took some time to navigate the right financial structuring so we could get to the money so no project is jeopardized, that we can turn on the switch right away to start these critical projects that I believe in, and also telegraphing my support for the capital plan to show my commitment to the long-term investments, again, that nobody else had the guts to do because it is tough. It is tough to do this, and it's so easy to kick the can down the road. It is so easy to do that. And it's not something I'm prepared to do. I will walk into a fire on behalf of my constituents to reduce their costs, and I'll be happy to do that any day of the week.
Sorry, if I could, you described this as a very normal sequence of events. Is there anything you would have done differently, given the opportunity to do it again?
No.
Right, Michelle.
Hi, thanks. Catherine, you were talking about maybe it takes a longer period of time to get to that 15 billion. Are you talking about the MTA selling longer-term debt?
I think we'll work through that, but we think that we have a way to get there. The most important piece of this is that they will have the funding that they need to put the projects out that this was to support.
But you're only going to have like roughly around $600 million a year coming in theory, rather than the full $1 billion a year coming in. So how do you
Technically, it was
bond?
only 900 in the model, but okay. So we do believe that we can bond over time and have them be able to do all their projects because they have the source of income moving forward.
Jose?
Hi, Governor. Hi, Jana. Hi, everyone. What were the last 5 months about? Because for those of us who cover it, it might feel a little bit like a dream that these 5 months just happened. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Well, the 5 months were what I would call the pause. No, I'm not being facetious. I mean, I said I was going to pause this. You know, give us time to come up with a plan. I didn't hear what you said, but okay. 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 A pause is a pause is a pause. People thought it was permanent death. I said all along it was not permanent death. I said I would have a solution by the end of this year. It is November heading into December, which is I describe as the end of the year, and also knowing I have a time frame in which to do this because we have to have additional approvals from the MTA board and signatures, and again, certainly working with the Biden-Harris administration to get these approvals from the state or the federal DOT. So this was the time it took for us to come up with a plan that says, I said to my team, come back to me with a plan that says we can accomplish our goals but reduce the cost for New Yorkers. And I'm proud that they did that.
Okay, back here.
Governor, you just mentioned that the congestion pricing is going to start January 5th. But you mentioned at the same time that it's going to be another public hearing. What is the purpose of that public hearing when it's already a date to start with? Is going to be any changes about it?
No, there's a public. I think that's just required by law. Public comment period, not a hearing.
I mean, we have to. There's a state process of public information. It's actually not another public hearing. It's a public information process, so people can know what's coming and get ready. And we're on track to complete that in the time frame that the governor has mentioned. The other action, MTA action, is that our board will take this up next week at the board meeting.
Over here, Alfonso.
Hi. So a lot of discussion about the funding, but one of the key goals of congestion pricing was obviously to reduce congestion.
Mm-hmm.
Any estimates on how much less congestion will be reduced under the reduced fare? I mean, if it's not creating as much of a disincentive? And as it was, if there weren't huge numbers, I think it was in the 15 to 17% range that was being projected. What is it now?
I think it was 15 to 17%. It's now about 13.4%. But again, this was studied. This was in the range of possibilities. They were looking at anywhere from $9 to $23. And I remember reading a lot of articles, blaring headlines that said it was going to be $23. So, we are getting to the place where I can support $9, never 23, and bring it down from the 15, which is what it was going to be. Again, reducing it by 40%.
And New York.
Hi, Governor. So I wanted to ask, why can drivers not afford to pay a $15 toll when, if you cross the Holland or Lincoln tunnels, they're already paying, I believe it's $15.38 is the toll, and it also, if you take the Metro north of the Long Island Railroad from the suburbs, a two-way ticket costs about $15 or so, and more if you're going from further out. So why is it that drivers can't afford to pay $15 to come into Manhattan?
I would never make the assumption that someone who drives a vehicle as their way to get to their job or to get to a doctor appointment to get a chemo treatment where they cannot go on a subway because they'll be compromised, as the woman I met in a diner told me. Don't assume that people don't have to drive their vehicles. I think there's a presumption that driving a vehicle automatically means you're wealthy. I know a little bit about vehicles. I used to run the DMVs. I know every make and model. I know what a 10-year-old Hyundai that looks like a clunker looks like when it's coming down 42nd like I saw it yesterday. So, yes, there are people who can certainly afford it, but there are people who will struggle with that additional cost. And as a result of what we're doing, we're cutting it by $1,500 per individuals. And certainly those who are able to travel, and some people work at their jobs at night, it's a bigger reduction. But I think it's just a recognition that New Yorkers are struggling. Whether or not you feel that if you're working in Lower Manhattan or not, there are a lot of struggling New Yorkers. And so we cannot be tone deaf to them. And I will take issue with anyone who thinks that it's only wealthy people driving vehicles in the city. I know every car.
All right, Juliet?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. How long do you think the $9 fee would remain in place? And what's your criteria if you're deciding to increase it, and by how much?
Catherine Blake?
Certainly. So the governor's been very clear that she does not want it raised for at least 3 years. And then we will file MTA, and that will file what possible phase-in would look like up to 15 when we complete the VPP.
And that would be a cap at 15, or would you go?
We would stay within the NEPA, but I want to be very clear. The governor is also, well, as she does every day, is going to be pushing us to look at everything, look at every bit of data as it comes in. Is this having any impact that was not foreseen in the models? We have a lot of confidence in the models, but New Yorkers defy expectations every day and Sunday. And so she is very, very focused on making sure that we are achieving, cleaner air, faster ambulances, but also that we are very, very conscious of what the costs are for New Yorkers.
Linda?
Hi, thank you, Governor. A couple of questions here for you. Number one, the congestion pricing is extremely unpopular with commuters, and these are all people, for the most part, who vote. So my question to you is, how concerned are you about the impact that this could end up having on your political future in New York?
I think those who've taken the time to get to know me over the last 3 years know that I always make decisions based on what's best for New Yorkers, not my political career. I'm willing to run into difficult challenges and take on the toughest issues because that's my job as governor right now. And I'll put that record out to voters, but not at this time. Right now we're governing, and I think there's a big distinction there. But that's the only thing I want to say. I'm out there reducing costs for New Yorkers. My next day, the state will focus on this, and I'm proud to be governor of the state and be able to make the tough decisions that are needed at the time.
All right, got time for about 3 more. Steve?
Hey, Governor. We saw a list of mitigation projects, a lot of funding for the Bronx in particular. Is that all going to be cut by 40% now as well?
No.
No. They're going to get the full funding as in the original plan.
Yes, they need it. This is a community that needs the assistance, and I'm proud to deliver it.
And I just emphasize as was promised throughout, there will also be mitigation for even the communities in New Jersey, the couple communities in New Jersey where had a couple census tracts that popped up in the model as having impact. So it's the governor's continuing what we did before, which is to make sure that every community that is identifying as having impacts does receive mitigation.
Okay, Evan?
Good afternoon, Governor. If you spent time watching the TMRB, as many of us did, there's it's portrayed as a very cautious balance between how do we make enough money to fund what we need and not tip into various, poor scenarios. If it's really just a matter, which it sounds like this is the plan, of extending the amount of time that the MTA has to pay back the bonds, be that through issuing 30-year bonds or whatever the mechanism, whatever the vehicle is, why did it take us 5 months to get there?
I mean, I actually would say that this is not only about that, and the governor, and which you'll see, is really pushed us on congestion more broadly. and really pushed us not only on what does congestion pricing look like, but there's a reason why the deputy mayor for the city of New York is here, is to also look at other opportunities to reduce congestion by, really honestly, better management of streets. And we're going to work through that, and I assume that will be part of what the governor will put forward in her budget in the spring. But it was a multitude of different things that we were looking at as we spent the last few months really digging in here.
Rouvain Post?
Yeah, yes, the latest is Donald Trump is now telling the Post this is the most, quote, and true to form, this is the most regressive tax to womankind ever. If you could respond to that statement specifically, and also just, I realize this is a celebratory day, but, most people, a lot of people, hundreds of thousands, not millions, seeing that 40% number, and they feel betrayed. They feel, it's a 40% discount on money that I don't want to pay. Can you at least offer an empathetic statement to people who say, but also to the Trump thing?
One will be apathetic, one won't be. Of course I understand how hard this is, but this is the law of the state of New York. I'm obligated to follow New York law. And I worked hard to find a creative solution to relieve the burden on these same individuals who are struggling. That's all I keep talking about because I've heard them. And I spend more time in diners than probably anybody in this room. And I'm out there listening to people. And I know people say, is that where you're getting information? I've taken facts. We convened experts during this time. We talked to national traffic mitigation experts. We convened people that were the smartest minds. But also, I'm not going to ignore the voices of those who feel government is not in touch with them. And I will always do what I can to work with the limitations I have. This is the state law. And I found a path forward that puts literally, when you think about collectively, millions of dollars back in New Yorkers' pockets. And I'm going to continue on that path. So I am sympathetic. I am concerned about them. And that's why I took on this fight in the first place. And I had a conversation with Donald Trump about our shared interest in supporting the MTA, supporting our system, making it world class, or why can't it be something we're all proud of, and Penn Station as well. And this allows for funding to invest in that, $15 billion in this plan. So I would welcome a conversation about the federal government then supplementing that kind of money as well. I'm looking for support from the federal government to support our shared goals of making this a world-class system. So I will have those conversations and ask all of my federal partners, from the president to the Congress on down, and understand that this is a huge driver of our economy, but also as New York goes, so goes the nation when it comes to our economy being strong and robust. And this is what drives our economy. 6 million people get to work on this system every day. And I encourage you again, take a look at the nice maps we put together for you. When you look at how people from all the surrounding areas are getting into work, by and large, it's over half, 75%, 80%, 90%. 90% are coming in, depending on the county, are coming in from counties where they're using public transportation. So I have a responsibility to them. People who live in Suffolk County, Nassau County, Orange County, Westchester County. I have a responsibility to them to make sure that this system is working. It can't be delayed. They have to get to their jobs. It has to be high functioning. But also, lastly, anybody who's concerned about the cost of living on New Yorkers, what about the state and local tax deduction that was eliminated under the previous time Donald Trump was president? In 2017, Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican White House. And what they did was cost New Yorkers, average New Yorkers, $11,000 more a year. And that pales in comparison to the additional costs of this initiative to keep a public transportation system functioning. So let's talk about this. If we're really serious about the same people that you're mentioning that I'm concerned about, let's give them a break. And in your first days of office, don't eviscerate the public transportation system. Help us by eliminating this burden, which is strangling everyday New Yorkers, a burden that they did not have all these years until 2017 when the Republicans put it in place. fix that first before you say a word about what I'm doing.
All right, Gabe, last one. Oh,
I just want to amplify what the governor said. You know, the SALT tax deduction affects so many families, but 0.5% of New Yorkers who live in the city will be paying the congestion pricing fee. And even in the counties which have, you know, much more limited mass transit, like Bergen County in New Jersey, it's 1%. So a point of perspective, you have 90% of the people who are coming to the CBD who are taking transit. Just bear in mind, and especially in light of the governor's comments about the comparative impact of SALT, the relatively small percentage of people that this toll does actually affect in real life.
all right, last one, Dave.
Governor, Streetsblog had an internationally known transportation economist run the numbers on a 40% decrease in the tolls, truck tolls, taxi surcharge, everything, and found that CBD traffic speeds would only increase by about 5% in the areas right around the CBD leading to it, about 3%. So what exactly is going to be the threshold here for making sure this actually works and that people don't go, you're tolling us and we don't even get to drive any faster?
No, the study that was done previously when they calculated the cost of all these different, you know, the differential between $9 and $12 and $23, this dollar amount was established to be 13.4% reduction in traffic.
Including the taxi surcharges, including the way that the trucks are tolled, including the lack of caps. Every single policy in this was different than what's in that specific scenario. So do you have what is there, and is there going to be a threshold for saying, you know, this is doing the bare minimum?
Look, this is we feel very strongly that this meets the goals of the NEPA. And if you remember what the NEPA requirements were, it's a 10% reduction in traffic and a 5% reduction in vehicle miles traveled. We are going to be above those, and that it will meet the requirement that we begin to fund the $15 billion for the MTA. So we are confident that that is what we are doing. Obviously, we will continue to watch it, but based on all of our models, we are over that goal in terms of where we need to be to achieve our congestion reduction and to achieve the money that the governor has said that we are very committed to on the MTA.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Governor, you did this all in private. The TMRB was public. Why did you do this in private and not engage with New Yorkers?